Welcome back to the Hive Doctor, your beekeeping mentor. When it comes to beekeeping, as we all know, there's a lot to learn. And when it comes to marketing and selling our honey, that's a whole new ball game right there. So today I want to go over 3 things to help you understand how to price your honey fairly to the level of value that you put into it. So stick around. Welcome back, beekeepers. So today we're going to go over 3 main points to consider when you are pricing your honey. First of all, let's cover how that happens to begin with. Well, there's 2 primary ways to price honey. And in both of those methods, the price of honey is considered by weight, not by volume, because, for example, this is a 4-ounce by volume jar. Volume is referring to water, and honey weighs approximately 1.5 times that of water. So once we fill this 4-ounce by volume jar up with honey, it's about 6 ounces of honey. So the first way that beekeepers generally make money in the commercial industry, this was how I learned in Florida, we would produce a lot of orange blossom honey, for example, in that area. And so we extracted it into 55-gallon drums. And then we sold directly to a bottler. They paid us per pound after figuring in the color, the moisture content, and if they suspected anything like chemical content or biological content from a lot of brood being uncapped into the honey during the extraction process. That's not the method we're going to be talking about today. In fact, I'm going to give you one more piece of information on that before we get into how to price your honey for direct-to-consumer sales. And that is, if you guys have the American Bee Journal or something similar, or if you don't, I recommend getting a subscription. But inside you will find a honey report. And what it does is it gives you an updated price per state and per variety of honey of pretty much where honey prices are now. This one's on September 2024. So in the making of this video, this is a couple of months old. So I'm going to show you this up close and give you an example, because even though this is not the method we're talking about today, you need to know that this is not the method you should be using if you have a subscription to something that shows you U.S. honey crops and market prices. All right, so here's our honey market price page. We're going to come in closer, and we're just going to pick, since I mentioned Florida, let's start with Florida and see what honey prices are for varieties there. The first one is gallberry, and when you get a white or extra light and light amber, so those 3 colors are being categorized together, bottlers are offering $2.20 a pound. For goldenrod light amber, they're offering $1.65 a pound. And that's pretty much how it works when you sell to a bottler or other packers or handlers that end up bottling the honey themselves and relabeling it under their own label. That is not what we're going to be doing today. All right, so the method that you and I should be using if you're not a commercial beekeeper that sells to a bottler or a handler of some type is we're going to be selling directly to consumers, and that means we need to know how to price our honey accordingly. So I'm going to go over 3 of the main things to help you figure that out today. 1, you need to identify the varieties of honey that you in your area produce. So pretty much anywhere in the US, I'm pretty sure, produces some kind of wildflower. So that's going to be considered a common honey. And although the flavor will vary from region to region, even county to county, neighboring counties can have completely different tastes in their wildflower honey. That's going to be probably a more average price, since it's a common thing that you can find just about anywhere. Wildflower is generally a darker honey because it's a blend of things. That's not always the case. I'm not aware of every variety that's out there. But in my experience, wildflower is going to be darker and a blend of what the area has to offer. In my area, my wildflower primarily comes from tulip poplar trees, the wild cherry trees, and blackberry. Each area is going to give you a unique blend of wildflower. And wildflower is not considered a varietal honey. It's a blend. A varietal honey is something that is considered a monofloral source of nectar, meaning that one thing was primarily blooming, and that will make up the majority of, say, a jar of honey, for example. There might be some other blossoms that the bees forage from and mix with that varietal, but it's a small percentage and it's not going to overwhelm the proper flavor and color that represents the varietal source. So let me give you an easy example for me. Right here in the North Georgia mountains, we produce sourwood honey. It's not made anywhere else other than this tri-state area. So it makes it, in my opinion, a more rare honey, a highly sought after honey, not just because of its rarity, but because the demand for it is high, because the flavor is amazing. So compared to wildflower, that's going to be a higher priced honey. So to recap on that, the first thing to consider are the varieties and blended varieties that you produce in your area. The second thing to help you price your honey is going to be comparing it to your local micro market. In other words, what are the other beekeepers in your area selling their honey for? That doesn't mean that's what you should price yours at, but it's a good starting point. And a way to make this a little more simplified and obvious is if your neighbor beekeeper is offering a jar of wildflower down the road for, let's say, $10 a pound, it might be a challenge for you to get $20 a pound, especially if that beekeeper's already established a reputation and has been in the area for years. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does mean that if you're going to get that $20 a pound, you've got to do some serious marketing and education to show why it's worth that much more. And that's going to lead to the third thing for you to consider when pricing your honey when selling directly to a consumer, and that is your beekeeping practices. The majority of consumers are completely unaware of beekeeping practices. Most of them just say, oh, is the honey raw? Okay, that's what I want. That's the only thing they really know to ask. But there are so many other factors that if we take the time to practice ourselves in our beekeeping methods, we can educate the public on and our consumers and ultimately be able to price our honey appropriately, because we're going to possibly and hopefully be offering a higher level of value than all the other guys in our area that offer it at a lower, cheaper price. And just as a side note, if you're cool with pricing your honey as Beekeeper Barbara down the road, then that's fine. You don't want to compete too much, you just want to get what you get, you're not in it for the money, no big deal. But if you're trying to make this a business and potentially a career, then this is going to be something that you'll want to gradually work your way into and up. All right, so what are the type of things that we do as beekeepers that could affect the price of our honey in a downward trend or an upward trend? All right, so for one, what are your pest and disease management practices? Do you use chemicals, miticides? Those things are automatically going to dock you points on being able to put your price higher. And again, no one's going to know this but you. So this is kind of a self-honor system here, but it's also an opportunity to promote yourself. So in my practice, I advertise that I harvest sustainably. I don't take too much from the bees. I leave them enough for themselves. I advertise biodynamic practices. And that's working with the environment through the seasons, which takes an intricate knowledge of bees in order to do. And a lot of people like to hear things like this. I also advertise it as raw, local, wild cultivated, meaning I'm in a very low pesticide spray area. And if pesticides can build up in the frames of our boxes, couldn't also miticides? I don't know. No scientist, but they both end in side. So I'm thinking probably. I don't use any high fructose corn syrup, which has residual pesticides. I don't use any miticides in my colonies. And I let people know this. I want them to know they're getting the best of the best and 100% natural. That there's the least amount of processing from hive to jar as possible. And that my honey ultimately is still a live food. All the enzymes are still intact, and those are the things that are going to be good for your body. So health-mindedness, those are the type of people I'm appealing to. Someone who's looking for higher quality. And if those aren't the things that you're doing, that's okay. Price it closer to what everyone else is doing in your area. But if you want a higher priced product, consider integrating some of the things I just talked about into your own practice and learning how to do that. I've seen where a lot of them will feed year-round, and that feed will make it into the honey. So those are 3 things to help you price your honey in your area. Again, learn the varieties that you have, learn what other beekeepers are pricing their honey at for your particular market and start there. And then go up or down on that or remain the same depending on your beekeeping practices. And again, remember that the honey crop and market reports in the journals are reporting to us per pound prices for commercial beekeepers selling to honey handlers, bottlers. This doesn't apply to you who are selling directly to the consumer. Your honey should be priced considerably higher than those $1.65 and $2.20 a pound prices. They should be a lot closer to $1 an ounce. And you need to take into consideration other things as well. How much are you paying for your containers and your labels? And if you're telling yourself you're not in this for the money, sometimes that can just be an excuse that we tell ourselves because we're afraid of stepping out. We're afraid of asking more money for what we have. But believe me, there's plenty of people out there who are looking for that higher quality. And they are looking for people like you to advertise it and let them know that they're getting something good. There's so many of us out there that want a higher level of quality and are willing to pay for it. So learning what your market can handle in that is what your job is going to be. I'm finally comfortable with where I am with my prices. It reflects who I am as a beekeeper. It reflects my methods and how much I care for my bees. But it also reflects how much I care for my customers. So let me know what else you consider in your area, what varieties you offer. And of course, those are just some of the basic things. There's definitely other elements to consider when pricing your honey, but I don't want to overcomplicate it today. So keeping it simple, pro pricing tips. Tell your friends about the Hive Doctor. I'll see you guys in the next video.